They walk away. They act like it never mattered. They tell the world they've moved on. But deep down, they don't forget. Even if they look cold, even if they pretend you're a shadow in their past, the avoidant carries you inside them. Not in the way you wish, not in the way they'll openly admit, but in the silent corners of their nervous system, in the hidden chambers of their memory. You remain. This is the paradox of the avoidant. They deny with their words, but their body remembers. They dismiss with their actions, but their mind replays. They pretend you are gone, but their attachment still lingers. And this is why you can leave the relationship, but not the imprint. The imprint they can't erase. When you love an avoidant, you learn a truth most people never see. They are experts at hiding, but terrible at forgetting. They may avoid conversations, ignore messages, disappear for weeks, or shut down when closeness feels overwhelming. But here's the secret. Avoidants don't move through relationships lightly. They don't actually let go of the people who touch them in ways they weren't ready for. On the surface, it looks like detachment. In reality, it's storage. They place you in a hidden compartment, lock the door, and try to convince themselves you no longer exist. But memories don't vanish. They get buried, and buried memories are still alive. For the avoidant, every relationship leaves an imprint, a trace on their nervous system, because attachment isn't a choice. It's biology. And no matter how hard they try to act independent, their biology betrays them. This is why you'll notice patterns. The avoidant may act like they've forgotten you, but they compare new partners to you. They replay old conversations in silence. They dream about you without wanting to. And sometimes, in their loneliest moments, they even check if you're still there. Silently, from a distance, never admitting it to your face. The paradox is brutal. They punish themselves with longing, while refusing to admit they long. And this is why they never truly forget. Because forgetting isn't about deleting memories. It's about releasing emotions. And avoidants don't release. They suppress. They shove feelings into boxes, only to trip over them later. You remain, not because they want you to, but because the very act of pretending you don't matter cements you deeper into their nervous system. Every time they silence your name, they hear it louder inside. Every time they bury the memory, they reinforce the fact that it was powerful. Every time they dismiss you, their body remembers you more. This is the cruel irony. The harder they try to forget you, the more they can't. And this isn't because of you, or because of what you did. It's because the avoidant way of coping, denial, suppression, silence, ensures the past never leaves them. Why pretending is their shield. For the avoidant, forgetting isn't the problem. Admitting is. They don't actually erase you. They erase the evidence of you. Because to admit they remember, to admit they still carry you, would expose them. It would mean vulnerability. It would mean showing the very thing they've been trained their whole life to hide, need. So instead of saying, I still think about you, they act like you're invisible. Instead of showing their attachment, they mask it with detachment. Not because you don't matter, but because you matter too much. Think about the avoidance childhood. They often learned early that love was dangerous, that closeness was unreliable, that needing someone meant rejection. So they built a strategy. Never let anyone see your longing. Never let anyone witness your ache. Never let anyone know you still care. This wasn't a choice. It was survival. The child who reached out and wasn't met became the adult who hides their reaching. The child who cried and was ignored became the adult who swallows their grief. The child who wanted closeness but was pushed away became the adult who acts like closeness is unnecessary. But here's the truth. The need didn't vanish. It simply went underground. So now, when they lose you, when the relationship collapses, when the silence takes over, they don't forget. They pretend. They build a mask of coldness. They build walls of dismissal. They repeat the mantra, I'm fine. I never needed them anyway. But it's not true, because the nervous system remembers. The body remembers. The heart remembers. And this remembering is quiet. So quiet they can almost convince themselves it's gone. But then a song plays. A scent drifts past. A phrase repeats. And suddenly, they're back in the memory. It hits them not as romance, not as desire, but as ache. A heavy ache they can't name. They don't tell you this. They don't even tell themselves. Because to say out loud, I haven't forgotten you, would tear down the armor. That keeps them safe. This is why their pretending is so convincing. It's not just an act for you. It's an act for themselves. They live by a rule. If I don't acknowledge it, maybe it isn't real. But reality doesn't vanish. It waits. It lingers. It seeps through the cracks in silence. And here's what's ironic. The more they pretend you're gone, the deeper your imprint sets in. Because avoidance isn't erasure. It's containment. Imagine stuffing clothes into a suitcase. You can force the zipper shut. You can sit on top of it to keep it closed. But the clothes are still inside. And eventually, the zipper strains. That's what it's like for the avoidant. Their silence is the zipper. Their memories are the clothes. They can push, they can force. But the past doesn't disappear. It waits, pressed tightly into the folds of their mind, ready to resurface when the silence breaks. So when you wonder, did I matter? Do they even remember me? Am I erased from their story? The answer is no. You are not erased. You are hidden. And the hiding isn't because you were insignificant. It's because you were too significant. To forget you, they would need to process you. To release you, they would need to feel you. But feeling you threatens the very system they've built to survive. So they pretend. They deny. They dismiss. They act like you're just another chapter. But deep down, you're not a chapter. You're a bookmark. And no matter how far they read ahead, a part of them always flips back to you. The traces they can't erase, no matter how hard they try. Avoidance can't delete you. They can block your number. They can mute your updates. They can fill their calendar with work, their nights with distraction, their bed with someone new. But erasure doesn't happen this way. Because what the avoidant doesn't realize is this. Connection leaves traces, and traces are stubborn. They live in the nervous system, in the body's memory, in the small reflexes that happen before thought. They can run from your presence, but they can't run from their own wiring. Think about it. When someone laughs in the way you once laughed, they feel it. When they walk past a cafe you used to visit together, they pause, even if only for a second. When they hear your name spoken in a crowd, their heart skips, and they hate that it still does. This is not weakness. It's imprint. Attachment isn't just emotional. It's physiological. It's built into the rhythm of breath, the pacing of heartbeats, the release of chemicals that flowed. Every time you were near, the brain maps familiarity. It encodes safety and threat. And even if the avoidant runs, the map doesn't vanish. It's still carved into their system. But here's the paradox. The avoidant doesn't want to feel this. They don't want these traces. Because to feel them is to admit they're not free. So what do? They go silent. They bury. They distract. They put layers of distance between themselves and the triggers. No music that reminds them. No streets that take them back. No conversations where your name might slip in. They build a private ritual of avoidance. And it works. Until it doesn't. Because you can't untrain a body that has known closeness. You can only silence it. And silence always breaks. The avoidant lives with two truths that fight inside of them. The first truth, I don't need anyone. The second truth, but I can't stop remembering. One truth is shouted, the other is whispered, but the whisper never dies. That's why, months later, sometimes years later, they'll reappear, not always with words, sometimes with a subtle reach. A like, a late night message, a question that doesn't really matter, but is really saying, are you still there? To you, it feels sudden, but for them, it's been building all along. The traces never left. They only hid. Here's what makes this important. When the avoidant pretends they don't remember you, they're not lying to hurt you. They're lying to protect themselves. Because remembering you means remembering their own capacity for longing. It means acknowledging that no matter how independent they appear, they're still wired for closeness. And closeness terrifies them. So, they rehearse forgetting. They practice indifference. They look away so often. They almost believe it. But the body betrays them. The nervous system leaks. The heart skips. The memory flashes. And this betrayal isn't weakness. It's truth. The truth is, they don't forget. They compartmentalize. They don't erase. They store. You live not on the surface of their mind, but in the hidden chambers, the places they never let anyone see. And while you may not always see evidence of this, you can feel it in their hesitation, their sudden reappearance, their eyes when they accidentally soften, their voice when it lowers for just a second too long. Because forgetting is final, and the avoidant doesn't do final. They do distance. They do delay. They do silence. But not forgetting. This is why, even when they're gone, even when they've convinced everyone, maybe even themselves, that they've moved on, the truth is different. The truth is, they're still carrying you. They just carry you in secret. And the more they hide, the heavier it becomes. The weight of suppressed memory. They think forgetting is strength. They think silence is victory. They think distance is control. But what they don't realize is this. Forgetting requires release. And release requires safety. An avoidant rarely feels safe enough to release. So instead of letting go, they store. They bury. They compartmentalize. But buried memory is not erased memory. It's weight. And weight demands to be carried. Picture it like this. Every memory with you is a stone. Some stones are light. A smile, a small inside joke, a simple routine. Others are heavier. The night you understood them, the time you held them when no one else could, the words you spoke that cut through their armor. Instead of letting these stones rest in the open air, they gather them, hide them in secret pockets, and carry them everywhere. From the outside, they look light. They walk fast. They appear unbothered. But internally, their pockets are heavy. Their steps are slower than they admit. Their body aches with the burden of what they refuse to release. This is why the avoidant doesn't truly forget you. They can't, because forgetting would mean unpacking. It would mean facing the stones, naming them, grieving them, and letting them rest. And grief feels too dangerous. Grief would require surrender. Grief would prove that they cared. So instead, they keep carrying, and the weight grows. Sometimes it leaks out sideways, in irritation that feels bigger than the situation, in sadness they can't explain, in restless nights, or dreams they don't talk about. Their body knows what their mind denies. You're still there, because attachment doesn't vanish. It roots, it imprints, it lingers. And while the avoidance conscious mind says, I've moved on, their unconscious whispers, you're still carrying. Here's the irony. The harder they fight to forget, the stronger the memory presses back. Suppressed emotion intensifies. Blocked attachment grows sharper in the shadows. That's why, when they see you again unexpectedly, their reaction is never neutral. It's too much warmth, or too much coldness, too much indifference, or too much intensity, because neutrality requires release, and release never happened. This is also why they're often haunted by comparison. Even if they build a new relationship, even if they surround themselves with novelty, there are cracks, moments when something doesn't feel the same, moments when the new can't match the depth of the old, because the old is not gone. It's still alive in the weight they carry. They may not admit it. They may not even fully recognize it, but they feel it in the restlessness that won't settle, in the satisfaction that never lasts, in the quiet sense that something important is missing. What the avoidant doesn't forget is not just you as a person, it's the way you touch the part of them they don't let anyone see. That's why the memory lingers. That's why the imprint holds. You weren't just in their life, you were in their defenses. You pressed into the walls they built. And that kind of impact doesn't wash away. But here's the truth you need to hold: the avoidance inability to forget you is not the same as their readiness to return. Memory is not action. Longing is not change. You can live in their hidden weight without being in their present choices. You can matter deeply to them and still not be met with the vulnerability you deserve. And this is the most painful part. You may never see how much you're remembered because they guard it, they protect it, they keep it secret. Their silence doesn't mean you're erased, it means you're buried. And burial is not the same as absence. So, when you wonder if they've forgotten you, remember this: they haven't. They can't. Not because you're unforgettable in a romanticized way, but because attachment is physiological. Because you left a mark on their nervous system. Because they store, not release. And every stored memory is a weight they'll carry long after they've convinced the world and themselves that they've let go. The call that memory makes: the avoidant doesn't forget you, but memory alone doesn't heal them. Memory alone doesn't change them. Memory alone doesn't bring them back in the way you once hoped. Because memory is a shadow, and shadows cannot touch. They only follow. Still, memory calls. It calls when they're driving alone, and a song reminds them of you. It calls when they wake up at night and feel the ache of a loneliness they swore they didn't need. It calls when life gets heavy and they long for the safe place you gave them, but refuse to admit they miss it. It calls in silence, in fragments, in flashes of moments they swore didn't matter, but mattered more than they dared confess. Here's the secret: avoidants don't just carry memories, they revisit them quietly, privately, like an old box they promised to throw away, but keep hidden in the back of the closet. They take it out, not every day, not even often, but when they do, they linger. They turn over the pieces. They let themselves feel just enough, but never too much, because too much would shatter the illusion that they've moved on. And here's the paradox: the avoidant protects themselves by keeping distance, but in that distance, they create the very conditions that make memory stronger. Because distance idealizes, distance magnifies, distance turns ordinary into precious. So while you may have been real, imperfect, human in the day-to-day, in memory, you become sharper, more vivid, more irreplaceable. The less they allow themselves to touch you, the more your presence lingers as untouchable. But listen closely. This doesn't mean you should wait for them to return, because their memory is not a guarantee of action. You can be unforgettable to them and still unloved in practice. You can be carried in their hidden heart and still shut out from their daily life. And your healing cannot depend on whether or not you're remembered. The truth is, You've been carrying too. Carrying the questions. Do they think of me? Did I matter? Was it real for them? Or was it only real for me? These questions can keep you tied to someone who isn't showing up. They can trap you in their silence, in their withholding, in their refusal to face what they carry. But you don't need to live in that trap. Here's the power you have. While they bury memory, you can release it. While they carry weight in secret, you can choose light. While they hide the truth, you can step into it. You don't have to be trapped in their unfinished story. You can write your own. Because memory is not the final word. Action is. And your action matters. Not theirs. Not what they do or don't do or pretend to feel. Yours. Your choice to stop circling their silence. Your choice to breathe without waiting. Your choice to claim a life where your love is met, not hidden. And maybe one day, their memory will call louder. Loud enough to break through their walls. Loud enough to push them toward change. But whether that day comes or not, you don't have to stand still. In the waiting, you can honor the truth that you mattered, not because they remember you, but because you loved deeply. You showed up fully. You gave something real, and that will never be erased. So here's the invitation. Stop asking if they've forgotten you. Start asking if you're ready to remember yourself. Not the version of you that chased, not the version of you that waited, but the version of you that is free, because that's who you are. Not their hidden memory, but your living truth. If this spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs the reminder that being unforgettable isn't the same as being chosen. And if you're ready for more insights like this, subscribe, not for them, for you, for the part of you that deserves to be seen, to be understood, and to be loved openly, freely, and without fear, because that's the love you deserve, and that's the love you're walking toward.